We're here today to sign a very important bill, certainly for LSU in particular, but for all of higher education. First of all, I want to start off, we got a number of people that have made today's bill signing possible. I want to thank them, and I ask you to hold your applause so we get through everybody that is here with us today. And there are several people that worked so hard on this that couldn't be here today. Now, I want to start, and you're going to hear from some of these folks as speakers. I want to start with our legislative delegation. We've got the authors of the legislation. We've got Speaker Jim Tucker, who authored this bill in the House. We've got Senator Conrad Appel, who handled the bill in the Senate. We've got Senator Clater. We've got Representative Foyle, Representative White, Representative Pani, and there are other legislators that supported this legislation as well. But I want to thank these men for their leadership and also for being here today. I especially want to thank the authors, Speaker Tucker and Senator Appel, for supporting this very, very important legislation. Let's give these legislators a great round of applause for their support for this bill. We've got some folks as well from right here at LSU. We've obviously got, and I want to thank our hosts. We've got the Chancellor, Michael Martin. We've got Jack Hamilton, the Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost. We've got Eric Monday, the Vice Chancellor of Finance. Jason Drade, the Director of LSU External Affairs. Several other folks from LSU as well, and I want to thank them. Even though this legislation benefits many, many campuses, I know that folks from LSU came to the Capitol, provided testimony, provided specific examples of how this piece of legislation would help them and be very beneficial to the campus. So let's give the folks at LSU a great round of applause as well. But finally, I really want to thank, and you know, this is the last group I'm mentioning, but this is the most important group in terms of us being here today. And I want to thank, and there are many, many, and I'm not going to be able to get all their names, but I want to thank the many business and community leaders who came together. They did several things. One, they looked at the operations within higher education, made specific recommendations about how higher education could be more efficient, more accountable, if the processes were streamlined, if the red tape was cut. They offered their business expertise to make specific recommendations. And then they came together. Many of you remember we met multiple times at the mansion several months ago before the start of session to put together good ideas in one piece of legislation to help higher education achieve those efficiencies identified by these business leaders. But then they built a coalition statewide to continue to press for these reforms at the Capitol, and they're going to continue to provide support to our campuses to provide them with specific guidance on how they can use this new flexibility to be more efficient, more accountable, and more effective with the dollars and to do a better job for our students. And again, there are many, many folks. Sean Riley was the president of the Flagship Coalition. We also had the Build Organization. We had GNO Inc. We had Blueprint. We got Barry Irwin here from Cable. We've got Lane Grigsby. We've got Roy Martin here as well. Mike Olivier from the Committee of 100. Brack was very involved with this process as well. There were a number of significant employers as well as board members. And again, we wouldn't be here today without the expertise, the encouragement, the advocacy of these stakeholders, these community and business leaders. I want to thank them again for offering their specific expertise, their specific recommendations, as well as their time. I see Lee Griffin back there as well, and I know there are many, many others, and I apologize in advance. I know Sean's going to be coming up to talk, and I just asked him. I see Mike Polito, and I see many others that have been involved from the beginning of this process, and I just ask when Sean comes up to speak if there are other folks that we should be recognizing. Again, I apologize in advance, but let's give a great round of applause to these business leaders for what they've done to get us here today. Let me talk to you a little bit about the progress we've made in higher education, and then I see Jake Netterville. If I keep doing this, I'm gonna offend the people I don't mention, so I'm going to stop with Jake, and I apologize because there are many, many others in the audience that I should recognize, and I want to thank them for their leadership in getting us here today. Let me start with just overall in higher education, and then talk specifically about what this bill does for us and does for LSU and does for all of our campuses. Today is yet another important historic milestone in our work to improve higher education in Louisiana. Together, we've already made progress in improving and making important strides towards increasing student performance and graduation rates. The 6-year state graduation rate has risen from 33% in 1992 to 37% today. Over the same time period, the percentage of freshmen returning for their sophomore year has increased from 61% to 72%. In the last year, 6 of our 2-year schools were listed in Community College Week's 50 fastest growing community colleges for their respective size. 14 2-year schools made Community College Week's top 100 associate associate degree producers in the nation. We continue to remain committed to building on this progress. For example, in this last session, we passed legislation to increase, and the voters will get to vote to approve this amendment, to increase the constitutionally protected funding for TOPS by roughly $43 million. TOPS has already sent nearly 500,000 students to college. Many of those may not have otherwise been able to afford to do so. Roughly half of our students who intend to choose college in-state qualify for and receive TOPS. TOPS participants have a 6-year graduation rate of 57% compared to a non-TOPS graduation rate of 20%, and again, the state average of 37%. Right here, LSU Baton Rouge, where we're standing today, was named among Kiplinger's 2011 Top 100 Best Values in Public Higher Education. We've seen progress in the higher, in not only higher education, but in high schools as well, where we've lowered the dropout rates. According to the annual Diploma Counts report, Louisiana's high school graduation rate has increased by 5.3 points over the last decade, 2.2 points more than the national average, which only increased 3.1 points. We've also continued to make higher education a priority, even during challenging budget times. While our overall state budget has been reduced since January of 2008 by almost 26%, higher education's overall budget has only been decreased by 2.8%. In addition, in 2010, Louisiana ranked 9th in the country for the amount of state dollars spent on higher education as a percentage of state taxes, and the numbers go on and on and on. Having said that, we have made some very, very important progress, and that is a great thing. But the reality is, we know that there remains much work that remains to be done. We're here to sign a very important piece of legislation into law because we know we've got much more work to do. We know we are behind the country because we graduate far too few students at too slow of a rate. Our 6-year graduation rate of 37%, though it has improved, is still far below the SREB average of 52%. The state average time to get a degree is 5.7 years for bachelor's degrees, 6.6 years for an associate degree. According to the American Institutes for Research, Louisiana ranks 13th worst, 13th highest in the country in state dollars spent on students that drop out. Between 2003 and 2008, we spent over $217 million on students who dropped out with a year or less of education. To help address these low performance measures, we worked together last year to pass a transformational bill called the GRAD Act. That helped to create a strong performance-based foundation for improving outcomes in higher education. Indeed, we've said all along that we need to pay for results, not just activity. We need to not only pass the GRAD Act, but change the funding formula at Board of Regents as well to encourage excellence amongst our institutions in higher education in this state. This year, we've come back to build on that strong performance-based foundation. We worked with Speaker Tucker and Senator Appel to pass the GRAD Act 2.0. This bill will cut red tape, give schools more autonomies. Just here at LSU A&M in Baton Rouge, they estimate this legislation will save them over $52 million over the first 5 years of implementation, just due to the flexibilities they will gain through this bill. Today, we're here to sign this important bill into law. Let me tell you what this bill does. This important piece of legislation empowers the people who work with our students on a daily basis, the ones who know best how to manage their own campuses instead of trying to micromanage their activities from the state level. In exchange, campus leaders in GRAD Act agreements commit to graduating more students in less time in high-demand fields that will jumpstart their careers upon graduation. Now, it seems like a pretty basic concept. Why don't we encourage and reward our schools to graduate students with the degrees, with the skills they need to get good-paying jobs? But for too many years in Louisiana, we've not done that. Not in our funding formulas, not in our laws, not in our regulations, and that is why it is so important that we signed this bill to change the incentives for our campuses. Many schools made this commitment last fall. They recognized that student outcomes in Louisiana were too low. They entered into performance agreements that set short and long-term benchmarks for their graduation rates, retention rates, workforce readiness, operational efficiency, and articulation and transfer. The legislation we will sign into law today takes the next step by operationalizing key components of last year's framework. Specifically, it cuts through state micromanagement of campus operations to allow our institutions to achieve their potential and gives them more and better streamlined data on student progress. Basically, this builds on the GRAD Act in 3 important ways. Number 1, it prioritizes key student success metrics so that institutions know which of the nearly 52 metrics they should prioritize. You know, in talking to our new Commissioner of Higher Education, he makes a great point. In our funding formulas and our rewards, when you begin to measure too many things, you're in essence really measuring nothing. If you try to incentivize 52 different metrics, you really aren't incentivizing anything in terms of driving performance. So instead, This legislation puts special emphasis on student success metrics. For example, that includes 6-year graduation rates, first to second and second to third year retention rates, overall completers, by making these metrics required. These are the key components of improving outcomes. These are the data we should focus on to improve graduation rates and to ensure students are getting the skills they need to succeed in the workforce. And I can't emphasize how transformational this is for Louisiana's higher education system. For too many years, we've paid schools simply to be bigger, simply to offer more degree options whether they were needed or not, to instead change the incentives to say now we're really going to be focused on rewarding campuses based on completion rates, retention rates, graduation rates, and the success of students post-graduation truly is changing the culture and will change the performance of higher education in Louisiana. The second thing this bill does, it boosts the data and transparency required by the legislation, including streamlining and operationalizing a single student tracking system that will have student records follow students from one institution to another, ensuring they are completing their required credits to graduate, and also serving as an early warning system when students are not on track to graduate. Research shows that transparent tracking of student progress through transcript analysis and degree auditing can improve graduation rates by facilitating early intervention for students who may be behind on their credits or not fulfilling their degree requirements. Additionally, we know that currently what schools are spending per student varies widely, and that spending is not clearly correlated to student outcomes. Therefore, this legislation will further enhance the GRAD Act with a system to track per-student expenditures and outcomes by field so we can compare them with peer institutions. That'll help us to identify best practices for investing our higher education dollars wisely and share those best practices with all of our institutions. Finally, third, this bill strategically overhauls the way the state manages higher education operations in areas of purchasing, facilities, personnel, and investment, by making state oversight less bureaucratic and less burdensome. The operational autonomies are a comprehensive redesign of how higher education can make better, more efficient decisions with their dollars. Schools will qualify for these autonomies by meeting their targets and by streamlining different functions that will improve academic functions. For example, under the GRAD Act 2.0, this legislation will reward schools that have a high-quality review of programs they no longer need. In fact, the regents have recently eliminated 109 programs and terminated an additional 172 programs through consolidation because they were no longer needed. And the bottom line is the GRAD Act rewards schools that are already performing. For example, it rewards schools that are performing close to their peers by granting those schools the highest level of autonomy. There'll be tiered autonomies built into this legislation. LSU, as an example, fits into the category, and with these autonomies, we'll be able to improve even more. And this is really the heart of the GRAD Act, saying that the better the schools perform, the more autonomies they will earn and deserve. And there are different levels for different campuses. Let me give you some examples right here on the LSU campus. We know that right here, for example, as I mentioned before, LSU estimates they will be able to save $52.4 million over 5 years by implementing the GRAD Act. Let me give you just a couple of very specific examples. Before the GRAD Act, a contract at LSU worth over $100,000 would require as many as 13 steps and 22 weeks to be finalized. This costs LSU time and money and manpower while hindering their ability to be competitive. Under this legislation, they'll be able to cut down on the time it takes to execute contracts and have a wider range of providers available to them. For example, they recently found a contract for package delivery services that will lower the cost of an overnight. Well, yeah, that's right. We'll fix their intercom contract, their audio services as well. LSU, I'll start again. LSU found a contract for package delivery services that will lower the cost of an overnight shipment from Baton Rouge to Houston from $38.28 to $16.40, a savings of over 50%. Considering that LSU currently spends roughly $750,000 a year on delivery services, they could save over $300,000 a year just with this switch alone. GRAD Act 2.0 will also lower the time and cost of simple facilities projects, such as repetitive renovations that don't require an architect or engineer, by letting LSU manage the project rather than using the state as a middleman. This autonomy will produce some direct savings in expenditures. They estimate $725,000 in savings over 5 years, while also giving LSU the ability to construct and renovate buildings faster and at a more competitive price, which will also lead to future additional savings. Under this bill, schools like LSU can also seek a more competitive price and a more targeted plan for their needs on different types of insurance, such as workers' compensation. LSU estimates that it could save around $4.4 million over 5 years by purchasing various types of insurance in the private market. Perhaps most revolutionary, perhaps the biggest financial savings for the school, the bill allows for higher education to develop and pilot a procurement code that is less bureaucratic and more tailored to their needs. This will greatly improve our school's ability to spend dollars wisely on everyday items that the universities buy in bulk. For example, paper towels, rubber exam gloves, by piloting a procurement code specifically crafted for higher education. To give you another specific example, last year LSU paid an average price of $6.21 per box of scientific gloves. Under this legislation, LSU will be able to buy these same gloves at an average of $4.30 a box, a savings of over 30%. LSU currently buys 14,000 boxes of gloves per year, so this is a savings of over $26,000 just for this one product alone. With this change in law, Louisiana will now join 24 other states that have a separate higher education procurement code, recognizing that public post-secondary institutions need more autonomy and are not typical state agencies. Of their savings, LSU alone estimates they will save around $27.3 million over 5 years by purchasing lower-priced items. So the bottom line with this GRAD Act, we're doing two very, very important things. One, we are encouraging our campuses to make student performance a priority. We are truly rewarding excellence on our campuses. For those schools that do a better job of retaining and graduating our students and put them into good-paying jobs, we will give them more flexibility and more autonomies. The second thing we're doing is we're generating significant savings for taxpayers right here on the LSU campus, over $50 million in the first 5 years alone. I'll close with one reminder about why is it so important to improve outcomes for our higher education students. And the numbers are clear. I'll just close with one set of data. A person with a bachelor's degree makes $10,000 more per year on average than someone with just an associate's degree. Somebody with an associate's degree makes $6,000 more per year than somebody with a high school diploma. Somebody with a high school diploma makes $12,500 more than somebody with no high school degree at all on average. What that basically means is if you go from a student in the 11th grade, and if you just add 5 more years of school of education, going from the 11th grade through completion of a 4-year degree, that would increase your average annual income by $28,500. The bottom line is we must give every student in Louisiana the tools they need to succeed in the opportunities of tomorrow. To ensure their success, we're going to continue to work hand in hand with all of the leaders gathered here today and the others within higher education to give them the flexibility and the tools they need to improve student graduation rates and student performance. So yes, we still have more work to do, but today is a very important step forward to giving our campuses the flexibility, the incentives they need to continue to improve student performance right here in Louisiana. With that, I want to welcome Senator Appel, and I'm not going to introduce each of the speakers. Let me just tell you up front, we're going to ask Senator Appel to come up and speak, and then Speaker Tucker. Again, I want to thank them for handling this legislation. We have Chancellor Martin right here at LSU. We've got Sean Riley, President of the Flagship Coalition, Philip Roseman, spokesman for the Build Coalition, another coalition that has worked so hard to get the support that we need to be here today to announce this very, very important legislation. So with that, let me turn things over to Senator Appel, and I do see we've got some folks from the LSU board here as well, and I want to thank them for their support and being here as well. With that, I'll turn things over to Senator Appel. Please give a great LSU welcome to Senator Appel and thank him for authoring this, helping author this legislation.
This is a little bit of culture shock. As I drove in here today, I realized that almost 40 years ago I graduated from LSU. That's a long time. One of the things that I remember more than anything else after I graduated was the number of political leaders that have said over and over and again how important education, in particular higher education, is for the people of Louisiana. Well, friends, I want to tell you that there's only one governor that has really walked the walk, not just talked the talk, and that's this governor. That in 4 years' time, we've done more for higher education in this state than I can remember in all those 40 years past. And I want to thank the governor for that. Thank you, Governor. And I want to encourage him to keep the heat on. We need it. Let me just say one more little quick thing. The governor hinted to this, and it's exactly right. I come from business. I'm not a political animal. I just started the legislature about 3 years ago. My background was civic, economic development, and trying to help the folks of Louisiana. What I know intrinsically is that education is the key to getting us out of the bottom of the barrel. We're in the lowest percentiles in healthcare results, in quality of life, in income. There's only one way to get us out. It's not government. Government will not do the trick. Government cannot do the trick. It's jobs. And it's the people in this room that create those jobs, and the raw material for those jobs are the students that come out of these universities. So I want to thank everyone from LSU and the other universities and congratulate them and challenge them to keep pushing the envelope outward and forward, because we've got to do better for our people, and the only way we can is to educate our people. Thank you again, Governor, and thank you, folks. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. This is a great day for higher education in Louisiana. I'm very excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to say just a few words. I want to start off as well by thanking the governor. I tell you, 4 years ago, I distinctly remember a meeting, I think it was even before we got sworn in, where the governor called the president and I over to the mansion, and he said, I want to talk to you all about how we're going to move this state forward. And before the conversation was over, the revolving and recurring conversation was about higher education and what were we going to do this term to make Louisiana better in the higher education arena. And Governor, I think we've taken this last 4 years and, as Conrad said, done more for higher education than any single term in recollection, for sure, in my memory, and I think probably in history. And I just want to take a moment here first to start off by thanking you for your leadership, because without it, it would not have happened. Thank you very much. As it relates to the bill, I think a couple of thanks need to go out as well, particularly to the governor's education staff and to the staffs of the House and the Senate, who worked tirelessly and redrafted and drafted and redrafted to make sure that we got it right, working with all the variables that came of interest to the parties that were working on the bill and making sure that we got the best product that we could. Our staffs need to be commended for the work that they did. I'll hit on two words that the governor talked about, as I think that it relates to this piece of legislation. The first one is employment. We have talked about from day one that this term was going to be about jobs, and that we were going to do every single thing we could to improve the job market and the job opportunities for all Louisianians. And through the higher education reforms that we've taken on over the course of the last 4 years, we have seen improvement in employment. We've seen unemployment rates significantly lower than the national average, and it has a lot to do with the policies that have been put in place, both here in higher education, in economic development, in tax policy, and all the other pieces of government that we've worked on over the last 4 years that all funnel back into what we do in higher education. And I think we will continue to see focus, I hope, as I lead the legislature, but as those that continue behind us, to see legislation that continues to refine the opportunities for jobs and higher education and the improvements of both. The second, I think, that is most critical for this piece of legislation and for GRAD Act 1 is accountability. For far too long, this state has not held higher education accountable. And I have seen, since I've been in office, the willingness of higher education to take accountability and run with it to make their institutions better. And this piece of legislation moves our state in that direction. The people can have great confidence that higher education is moving in the right direction. These two pieces of legislation in particular, but there are several other, performance funding being one that comes right to mind. But GRAD Act 1 and GRAD Act 2 will really put us on a course over the next, I think, 10 years to significantly improve higher education in this state and move us into not only a national but an international competitive market where people are going to come to Louisiana because of the opportunities that they can have in higher education to grow themselves and to grow their businesses. And that's what we try to do in the legislature and work with the governor to accomplish. And I think this piece of legislation is just the cherry on the top for the things that have been accomplished this term. And again, I think all of the members of the legislature who worked hard to do this. I think all of the private sector folks who really came and helped educate members on what needed to be done. It was a truly successful joint team effort, and I'm very, very much appreciative. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Well, first, thanks to all of you for coming out for this wonderful occasion. During difficult times, we get too few opportunities to celebrate, but this is certainly one of them. And Mr. Speaker and Governor, apparently the rest didn't get the memo on how to dress today, but some of us are looking just perfect for this event. But to the Governor, to the leadership of the Legislature, Senator Appel and the Speaker, and to all of our other friends in the Legislature for stepping up, thank you very much. And to the business community and the leaders across this state, this is really a remarkable thing. For those of us who are relatively new to this state, and I'm here now 3 years, but having been around a long time, it has been a remarkable movement to see leaders from across the state, from the business community, political leadership, civic leadership, step up and make a commitment to fundamental improvement in higher education. We certainly feel it here at LSU, and we certainly know that it will make a difference. As the Governor suggested, this act will give us the chance to adopt best practices that in many instances have been well tested across the country. We can be as competitive on the operations side of this institution as we are in the football field and in the basketball arena and elsewhere. We can function like other great universities. And I commit to you on behalf of all of us at LSU, and several of my colleagues are here, and I believe I can commit on behalf of my colleagues across the state that we won't let you down. We understand how significant it is to this state that a higher education system with a small s, that means all of us, performs in such a way that we make this a better place for all citizens, students and others, current and future. And this is another step in the right direction. As we talked about last year when we had a chance to celebrate the GRAD Act 1, it was a great starting point. And as many of us pointed out, the U.S. Constitution was a great piece of legislation, but it's been amended 27 times. We know that continual improvement, continual rethinking of how we do business and how we conduct the great important exercises in education across the state needs continually to be evaluated and continually reformed. And I congratulate all of you for being part of that great process. And mostly I want to say on behalf of the students that I get to work with here every day, and the best students in the country, I'm convinced, come to stay in our state if we have a great institutions, and this gets us there. But on behalf of them, thank you, because this will give us a chance to give them what they deserve. A high-quality education that will launch them into their lives and their careers in such a way that they will succeed for themselves, but in doing so will succeed for all of us. So thank you all very much. Again, Governor, thank you for your leadership, and to those who authored the legislation and our friends in the legislature who stood up and supported it, thank you very much. It will make a difference. We won't let you down. And as we always say here, go Tigers.
Great words, Chancellor, and it's a great day for LSU. You know, today we're taking this great flagship in a direction that other great flagships in other states have taken, and as the Chancellor mentioned, we can compete with the best if we're playing by the same rules. And today, LSU gets to play by the same rules that other great institutions play by, and it's a great day. Wouldn't have happened without the Governor's leadership and his team. Great work.
Thank you, Sean.
We've got the co-chair of the flagship coalition here in Lane Grigsby, and many of our members are here, and we collectively want to thank you. And Senator, thank you for your
thank you.
Heavy lifting, and Mr. Speaker, this bill actually flew through, but it didn't have to. It was a lot of hard work, and it wasn't as easy as it seemed. So the folks standing behind me really deserve a whole lot of credit, and thank you all again.
I'm Philip Roseman. I'm a cardiologist from Shreveport. I'm chairman of BUILD, and I'm the last one before he gets the pen, so I'll be quick. Don't want him to run off. But seriously, BUILD is a group of 40 business organizations, chambers of commerce from around the state, Committee of 100, Blueprint Louisiana Cable. A lot of people joined together in support of higher education reform in this state. For us, this bill, the GRAD Act 2, is the most important higher education legislation piece in this session, as it was the most important piece in last session. The governor laid the context. We have low graduation rate. We have a lot of work to do in order to improve higher education in our state, and we're well on the way of doing that. Now, Governor, sometimes I'm taken aback when I hear people and read about the fact that there's no rhyme or reason to higher education reform in what we're doing in this state. There is. From where we sit, what we're doing is we're doing sound principles. We are balancing high expectations and operational freedoms. We're balancing accountability and autonomy. We're thankful for the work in helping our students be able to get in the right bus, the right seat of the bus, and the ability to change buses if they find the need to do so. For us at Build, it has been most important that the governor and the legislature and the flagship coalition and the Board of Regents and everybody involved work together under the idea that we're going to develop a set of autonomies that are accessible to all of the colleges and universities, not just the flagship. And we did that with this piece of legislation. We know that we can't continue to do the same things over and over again and get the same results. So I'm thankful today. The GRAD Act is a huge step forward. And Governor, I am so thankful, Speaker, Senator Appel, Sean, everybody in making this happen. So Governor, it's your pen. Thank you.
I see that Representative Pat Smith has joined us here too. Please come on up. Let's go. Let's sign this bill into law.